Hello everybody and welcome to another photography talk. And this time I want to talk to you about what I consider one of the most important aspects of photography, previsualization. Before we begin, as usual, if you want to support the channel, please put a like, subscribe, share with your friends, and check out my books. You can go on my website and you can see there my publication and other things that I do. So you can subscribe. There's a newsletter that I send probably once every 2 or 3 weeks, so it's not spamming your inbox, and you will see other news and other articles I write. This said, let's talk about previsualization. It's something that I'm thinking a lot about in these last days, because last week there was the announcement of the Pentax, the K3 monochrome. Leica announced another camera, monochrome camera, I think is M11, and so on. And this created on social media a kind of debate about the advantages of one technology over the monochrome technology over the color technology, and most of all, a lot of people were saying that they think it's better to have a color sensor, so you can post-processing in a different way, using simulating the filters in post-processing and so on. And it made me think how much with digital photography changed the way we approach photography, and I think it changed it in a totally wrong way. And I mean, with film we were used to be forced to do what is called the pre-visualization. It was the only way to create good images. Pre-visualization is something that implies that you know what you are going to do, you know your equipment and the limits of your equipment, or the good parts of your equipment, and so on. The pre-visualization is very simple. We live in a three-dimensional world with 5 senses. And if we see a scene in our real life, we have first of all the 3 dimensions. So we see everything as a 3-dimensional space. There's something that the camera doesn't see in that way. The camera is not stereo, it's just one lens. So in that case you see in 2 dimensions. And the other thing is that the camera doesn't have the other senses, doesn't have the touch, doesn't the smell, and all these kind of things, taste and so on. So this is important because with photography we have to convert 3 dimension and 5 senses in 2 dimension and 1 sense. To do this in an effective way, we need to know what we are doing, and we need to be ahead of the game and previsualize. It's kind of very important to be in control of what we are doing and not be a passive subject. With digital, it came out an habit to take the pictures and see after what the picture looks like. You take a look at your LCD screen on your camera, or you think, okay, yeah, the sky is not good, but I will change it, the things is not good, but I will change it, and so on. We are risking to become a passive subject in the photography workflow, and this is absolutely wrong. It's what is in my opinion, bringing down the level of photography. So previsualization was essential with film, and I think is still essential now. Previsualization can be a very complex thing. For example, if you do commercial assignments, as I did all my career, previsualization can be a very complex matter. If you do an advertise or something like that, you start from a concept, an idea, and you have to build the set, build the reality. You can see here, for example, Mr. Egg, pictures that I took for was a bookstore for Easter, to put in the shop window for Easter, and you can see this is all planned and pre-visualized in every aspect. So that's a kind of previsualization, and I did a lot of that. But there's also the ability to previsualize when you do the other kind of photography. Previsualization is important even in documentary photography and so on. It's something that you need to be able, when you see a sheen, to be able to imagine the sheen translated in two dimensions with only one sense to bring the message to the viewer. So that is absolutely essential. For example, I can show you here another picture that was not a commercial assignment, was just, let's call it a documentalistic photography. I was actually in a trip with my high school. Yes, it's a very old photograph. And we were in Mantova, a beautiful city. There was this fog in town, and I was looking at the sheen, and with the corner of my eye, I saw the guy on the bicycle coming into the sheen. I just saw the imagine something. I identified that, and at that moment, I pre-visualized the image, and I pre-visualized that I had the sheen in front of me, and I pre-visualized the bicycle passing in the right spot in the square, and I was ready to take the picture. By the way, it was so instinctive that I noticed the kids going around on the square that you can see on the background. I saw them printing the picture. I didn't notice them before. So, but I had pre-visualized the image. I knew exactly how the sheen was coming out with that camera, that lens, and that film developed in that way. And that made me take a good picture. If you do not get an habit to pre-visualize what you are doing, and at the beginning it's something that is slow, it's something that is difficult to do, and yes, it's better if you train yourself in doing it with set-up photos, like my commercial assignments, or you simply can think, okay, it's spring, there are beautiful flowers, and I want to do pictures of flowers, and you can pre-visualize how you will do that, and you can for example, do some still life where you control the light and everything, and that is a good exercise to learn how to pre-visualize. But then when you arrive and you arrive in a real situation with your camera, your mind will actually pre-visualize instantaneously. That's for me is the most important thing, because it's what differentiates a photographer with just a casual person with a camera, or worst of all on this time, an artificial intelligence. The idea is that if we are a photographer, we want to communicate with photography. And the essence of communication, first of all, is to have a message. And to have a message implies that we have a vision. So previsualization is what transfers that message and that vision in what is a photograph. When we go around to take pictures, we don't want to be casual shooters. We want to be able to do something that is meaningful, that has a message. Don't get me wrong, doesn't mean that you have to pre-plan your photography shooting. You can just go around and take pictures without problems. I mean, I'm used to go out and have always the camera with me. Sometimes I see things I like, I see the light I like, and so on, and I take the pictures. So it's not pre-planned. But when I see the sheen, I can see it transfer in two dimensions and in a photograph. And by the way, this is fun when you are going around. If you're a photographer and you travel and go around with people that are not photographers. I see that, for example, a lot of time with my girlfriend. She looks around and thinks, oh, that is beautiful. And I already say, no, that's not, because I already see the power cable in the sheen, or I already see different things, and sometimes I think, oh wow, that's fantastic, because I see a particular light in the sheen, and she thinks, no, it's not. It's not a kind of a beautiful place, but I have this ability to select only the part of the sheen that I think will go in an image. Something that was it's kind of fine. It was a few weeks ago, and we were going around, and suddenly I stopped in a place that was an industrial area that was really horrible. She was, yeah, I want to take pictures, and she was, what? And there was from one of the factories, on the back of the factories, there was a view on the mountains around. It was fantastic, but my mind was able to see the sheen, pre-visualize that I take only that part of the sheen, and so on. A non-trained person doesn't have this ability. Pre-visualization is also absolutely important in the case you want to use a monochrome camera. You want to use black and white film. That's essential, because you have to start to think in terms of different things, in terms of light, and in terms of patterns, in terms of surface. You don't have the color anymore as a language to communicate your message and your idea. So that is essential to pre-visualize. And pre-visualization means also that I know that I can in some way use, for example, a filter to improve the sky on the clouds and these kind of things. A part of the pre-visualization process is also to think what you will do in post-production. But the problem right now is that there are no limits in post-production to what you can do. So it's kind of difficult to pre-visualize what we will do in post-production and stick to it. And I mean, we take pictures, and we know that we can not only do what we planned in post-production, but we can add multiple levels of things. We can add much more complexity in post-production. We take the picture and we think, yes, I will limit myself to some, I don't know, dodge and burning and these kind of things, but then I look at the pictures and I think, yeah, but I can put a different sky, I can put different things, I can do much more, and at the end of the game, a lot of time we find ourselves not to be photographers, pre-visualizing in pictures and realizing the photograph, but we find ourselves attached to post-production tools, to editing software, it became a kind of painters, became kind of digital painters. And I don't like that. I personally really don't like that. I like to stick to what I had in my mind before I even took the camera out of the bag, or before I pushed the shutter button. That's what I think that differentiate photographers with, call them digital artists. Digital artists and photographers are two totally different categories. The pre-visualization is, in my opinion, what is essential. And to train for pre-visualization, it's very easy. What you have to do is simple. If you look at the, all the movies when the famous director arrive and start to look at the world this way, it's exactly that. You can cut cardboard with the proportion of the dimension of your sensor or your film, and you can look at the world through it, and that will help you to pre-visualize the world, to see the world in two dimensions, and to pre-visualize the framing and so on. It's an exercise that I always tell people to do. When I teach photography, the first thing that I teach is take a piece of cardboard, cut a hole in it that is the size of your sensor. If it's a small sensor, you can just cut it proportional because it's easier, but if it's the same size, the good thing is that the distance between the cardboard and your eye is exactly the focal length that you will need. So do that and learn how to previsualize. All the cameras, all the tools and everything is something that has to come after. It's you with the previsualization that will choose the tool that will help you in that direction. Right now the problem is that we let the tools choose the subject and choose us. When the cameras with the capability to do high ISO photography and so on came out, first thing, I always mention it because it's probably one of the more evident trends. The first thing that came out is the Milky Way, and that Milky Way is something that you can see it become a trend because the camera allowed it to become a trend. It was a way to follow the camera. We tend to follow the camera also because to sell cameras, the manufacturers have to put in some gadgets. And those gadgets, I call it gadgets, but let's say different functionality of the camera. Those will give some specific use and some create some specific photographs. All the advertise, everything we see around is based on the tool, the camera, and the post-processing tool, so the software that we use. And we see now all the software that is with artificial intelligence to modify our pictures, and you think, wait a moment, if I have a message that I want to communicate, I want to create that photographs, basically I'm a photographer, I want to communicate something, so I want to say to the world, that is me, that is my point of view. How can I do that if I let all the post-production, all other parts of that to an artificial intelligence, for example? But that is what is promoted right now, so you will continue to spend money on that. I really love to try new cameras, new tools. I like to do this kind of reviews of camera and these kind of things. But I have to be honest on one thing, that is the camera is not that important. It is not what creates the photograph. The photograph is created by the photographer. You can take a camera that is 70 years old or something like that. I mean, I have some I'm using some 50 years old cameras that are working perfectly. You get a beautiful Hasselblad or a Pentax 6x7 and so on with a good film, and there's nothing more than you need. New cameras, new tools give you more options, and that is great. It's something that sometimes we need. But the important thing is that we understand that those options are at our service and not vice versa. And another thing that we must realize is that we don't have to follow all that options. Is not important. We can have a camera that is able to do 30 frames per second, but we don't need to do that. We can simply take pictures, one frame every half hour as we did before perhaps. We don't have to follow everything that the camera is capable of. We have to follow our idea to create a message. More tool we have at our disposal, and more we will be able to communicate this message. But we don't have to lose the sequence of the fact that is the message that we have ourselves, who we are, and we go to think, yes, photography is my media. I can pre-visualize what I want to communicate. I take a camera and I realize what I pre-visualized. That's the sequence that we need to follow, and that is essential to create photography that have a meaning. What I see around right now is a very high volume production of photography. Right now there are tons of photographs produced every moment, but if we look at what is the message, we see really a lot of time and empty space. We see some technical good stuff because it's very nice to do that. We see a lot of time things, photographs that have a big impact at the moment, puff, it arrives there. But if we look at them and we think, where is the message? Previsualization is not just important on the technical side to understand how our workflow and our tools will convert the three-dimensional reality in a two-dimensional image of that, but is also essential to learn composition. Composition is one of the most important aspects of photography, and by the way, check the video here with about the books by Rudolf Arnheim. I think that's the Bible of composition. But composition is absolutely essential. And to learn how to compose, we need to learn how to pre-visualize. If you don't have that automatic process in us, it's very, very difficult to create a good composition when we do something that is just immediate, something that is we are around with our camera, we look at the subject and we take pictures, something that is not pre-planned and pre-organized. So we need to learn really how to pre-visualize to create great composition. And that is another thing that I see around that is lacking a lot in photography, and that is good composition. We have been repeated times and times that composition is the rule of thirds and all these kind of things. When I see images that are just rule of thirds and so on, it's banal. Composition is something that is absolutely complex, and it's something that you have to train your eye. And by the way, composition is also something that is absolutely personal. There are a ton of different styles of composition, and you have to find your own, something that works for you, and that is possible only with the pre-visualization. If you see this image here, for example, for the Thunderbirds, this has a very complex composition. It's not all the elements are trying to join together to create the composition, and it's something that for me was instinctive when I arrived there. It's I saw the plane, I had an idea of the wide-angle lens. It was tilt and shift, so I was able to shift it a little bit, and I took the picture, but it was something that it was a very fast-paced environment. But I had an idea of the main composition, and I had an idea what I wanted the element to give that composition. There are compositions that are absolutely complex. If you look at these pictures that was taken at the Cologne in Germany, Cologne train station, this is also something that has nothing to do with the rule of thirds and so on, but is kind of complex composition with some symmetry and some lack of symmetry and these kind of things and so on. It's something that for me, for example, the composition must be a little bit complex. What I notice often that my composition is something that is the opposite of what is needed right now, because right now the idea is to use the images on social media where they are watched for a tenth of a second and scroll by. So you need some. If you do something that is a little bit complex and needs time to be read, that's not working on social media. But then during the exhibit where people is there and they can slow down and look at the images, I see that the complexity of the composition and also what is a multi-level reading, possible reading of the image is something that is winning, is something that really can communicate the message. And that is another thing that we are losing, because we are losing pre-visualization, we are losing complex composition, we are losing complex messages. A lot of my images, they have a lot of different level of reading. The simple Mr. Egg, for example, you can take a look at the image and it's easy reading the fact that is an egg taking a sunbath in some tropical place. But then it was for a bookstore, so you notice the book, and if you look at the book is title, and if you read the book, you understand why there's the number, I think 31 on the chair, and so on. And that's all different level of reading. That's another thing that for me is very important. If I have a message to communicate, I like to do it in a deep enough way. And you can see this also in my videos that usually are pretty long, and I try to explain the things on different levels. In photography, it's essential also to have this different level of readings. If you want to detach yourself and become a photographer with a capital F, or with a capital P, sorry, that's in English, so there's the PH, but if you want to become a photographer with the capital P or the capital PH, so we are okay for that. And at that point, you need to have also a little bit more complex message than the little guy with the smartphone just taking a picture of his food. And that's also another important thing. I took, for example, a lot of food photography, and also in that the message is not. I see a lot of food photography right now that is just is the equivalent of the dish that arrived at the restaurant, and I took the pictures with the phone, but they are missing. They're attractive, and you look at them and think, "Oh, that's good," but they are missing the essential. They don't tell me anything about the recipe, for example. They don't tell me anything about what is inside the food, about the philosophy of the food. A lot of time they don't tell me anything about the ambience. You look at the food photography, it can be on a mountain or on the ocean or things like that. There's no difference. And that is important because we lost the previsualization, we lost the message, and so on. The idea is I take pictures, I make it look good in post-production. I will put this light, I will put the other light, and so on. But there's one thing: if you are photographing a dish and you put one kind of light, they can be perfect for something to eat in a cabin in a mountain, or can be a light that is perfect for the ocean, and so on. By the way, if you look at the pictures I mentioned of Mr. Egg, the most difficult part was to get exactly the light right to have the idea of the Caribbean or something in a tropical island. Those are details. Those are something that we need to have. The only way to have them is to start with previsualizing the image. And again, you can do it as an exercise. If you think you're lacking on that, just try to create photographs from zero. So you choose the subject, you choose the location, you choose the light and everything. Not just go out and taking pictures. Create an image, the kind of still life. And that is why it was so important also, if you look at all the painters, the famous painters, they started, almost all of them in academies and so on, you start with still life. You start with something that is a subject that is there, and you invent how to paint it, how to transfer it in reality. After that, you move on and you arrive at portraits and you arrive at landscape and so on. But the first thing, the first exercise is to do a painting of something that you can control. A still life means that you have your bowl of fruit usually, and you can dispose the fruit as you prefer. You can move the bowl and to have the light come in a different direction in respect of the vegetables and all these kind of things. So do that in photography. Try to think of a message that you want to communicate. Choose something that you can photograph and create the lights and create everything, and try to create different levels of reading of your image. Try to put a composition that is a little bit more complex. Try to play with the empty areas. Try to play with filling up the frame. Try to do these kind of things. Try to stay away from the rule of thirds because it sucks. And all these kind of things. So try to do that. And you will see that if you get used to that, it will be easy also to previsualize on the spot. When you are around, you just see something that you like, you turn around you take the pictures at the moment you had that perception, you are able to elaborate, previsualize, and usually take the pictures with decent composition and a good content. And that's all. I mean, I can go on for hours about the subject, but already the video is too long probably. So that's all. Previsualization is essential. If you use monochrome cameras or film, that is even more essential. And what I love about photography is when it's a rational process that goes from the previsualization to the printing of the image, knowing exactly what we are doing and doing it with an intent and with a message. And that's all for now, so thank you for watching. Again, if you want to support the channel, check out my books, Photography Life Manual, nice book with everything you need to know about the basics of photography, Lasting Photographs, beautiful novel, great reviews online and photographic blog, and in jet final print. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.